my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Oh, well, they gave me bars, but I can see between to a dusty yard and long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I dry my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone.
Hello, welcome to Heidbangers. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about some difficult subjects, so just a wee trigger warning for you. And as we're not mental health experts, we would always recommend that if you are struggling, please do seek professional help or talk to somebody you trust that you think could help you. Enjoy the show. We hope you take something from it. Please feel free to share it on social media, etc. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Heidbangers. This is episode number 9. I'm Matty, joined tonight by Jack, Alex, Scott, and Craig. How are you doing, guys?
I'm good.
Good, thank you.
So I'd ask that generically. Normally go round individually and I'd ask Scott. Aye, that's it. Just chuck a wee early grenade and see how everybody copes with it. But he's off past that test. No bother at all. Right, so. Craig, first time on Heidbangers tonight. Thanks for coming on. Just to give a little bit of context, Craig had listened to Heidbangers and it sort of resonated a wee bit with you, Craig. I think it'd be fair to say, and you felt you maybe had a bit of a story to tell to come on. So, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of start with you and just let us know what brought you onto Heidbangers and what did you want to talk about.
Thanks, Matty. So, I've listened to all the podcasts, really, football related, and then stumbled across Heidbangers, I think 3 or 4 Sundays ago. And I was driving to work, as you do, and I was thinking, bloody hell, that was a really powerful message. And it was a variation from, I think, Murray with his child who was ill, and also a couple others who had anxiety about going back into work after such a long time out. And then just some other, probably really honest conversations about general mental health. So I thought to myself, I really should get myself on this podcast and raise awareness about an experience that I went through a few years ago. So I reached out to you guys and asked if I could come along, and here I am. So just really wanted to share a little bit about my story. And sort of 9-10 years ago, I suffered quite a bit of domestic abuse, from physical to mental, and quite a lot of emotional abuse as well, for a period of about 18 months to 2 years through a toxic relationship. As always in relationships, they start off really well, but quite quickly there was some red flags, and things just weren't normal as they would normally be in what you would describe as a happy, loving relationship. So through time, things progressed to get really quite bad, to the point where my phone was being checked, call history, messages, social media. Now at that point it was only really Facebook, because nothing else was really around. I had Twitter, but didn't really use Twitter back then. In the line of work that I do, I have 2 phones, so work phone and personal phone. So work phone was also checked, and quite a few embarrassing phone calls to women, colleagues who I work with, around why is my partner called you type thing. Really, really embarrassing, cringeworthy stuff that I think back to it. But that was the tip of that was really the start of some tough times around, having things like my bank account cleared out 3 times. I can smile and laugh about it now, but it was brutal, being in that place where you had no money because every single penny was taken out of your bank account. Credit being taken out in your name. I speak from a little bit of experience, but back then it wasn't as tough to take out credit, where you could literally just do it if you had the right details of said person. So very, very challenging times financially. Again, in my line of work, it allowed me to have a brand new car, and my brand new BMW, which was 2 months old, was keyed from the bonnet right round to the driver's wing, after a disagreement. and it was a minor disagreement, but it caused £3,500 worth of damage. And trying to explain that to your line manager was pretty challenging, especially when you didn't want to share the actual reason as to why, something like that would have happened. General usual things would consist of clothes being cut up in the house, doing your ironing, getting your work clothes ready for the following day to be cut into tiny shreds as you come down for breakfast the following morning. You're thinking, what the hell? Things being thrown out, things being put in the bin, things being put into the garden, black bags, crazy things. And it just made you feel like so, to the point where worthless, because you didn't feel valued, you didn't feel loved. But there was one key thing that was holding me into this relationship, and some of the listeners may be thinking, "What the hell? Get out! What are you doing?" I had a child with this woman, and that made it so much more difficult. My ex-partner fell pregnant about 6-7 months into a relationship. It wasn't a planned pregnancy at all, but it was at the point whereby it was unplanned, but really there to support and settle down and be there as a loving father. As the previous daughter, who years ago that didn't work out. We got married way too young. And, I'm in brilliant terms with Chloe, my eldest, who's 16 and a half, and quite frankly goes to more Hibs games than I do right now, which is great that I've passed that down. But yeah, I had this niggling thing in the back of me that I didn't want to fail twice, if that makes sense. So I almost gave it every opportunity to work. And by doing that, it made, like I say, my relationships externally, virtually diminish, from parents to brothers and sisters to friends, family, even my daughter at some point, who at the time was only 8-9 years old, so she was really young. And my ex used to manipulate what I would say and almost turn me against them by saying, "You're not loved, they don't like you, you're not, they don't want to know you," type thing. So it was almost like she was twisting my mind and my thoughts, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't believe it at times, because I did. And it put me into a bit of a spiral of thinking, I need to stay with her because she's all I've got. Very, very, when I think back, she was very clever in how she manipulated and influenced how I was feeling and thinking. It started to get a bit worse. She used to then start hitting me. It started with like the odd slap, the odd punch, the odd black eye, to the point where she would then, constantly hit me, as in 3-4 punches at a time. She pushed me down the stairs. She locked me in a cupboard for 3 hours without anything. And if I'm honest with you, I don't know how I handled it back then. I genuinely don't know how I handled it. I basically lived a lie every day to the outside world, whereby people would say, "How's the family? How's your son? How's your newborn son? How's the missus? What are you doing at the weekend?" And I would just lie. I would say, "Yeah, things are awesome. Things are great. We're going out for a family walk at the weekend. We're going swimming," whatever it might be. But the harsh reality, I couldn't wait until the Monday where I was driving to work again, because that was my release away from this absolute mayhem. Through time as well, I then became what we call underperforming at work, and I was actually put on a performance plan by my line manager. And if I'm honest with you, it was probably a saving grace, because it gave me a kick up the backside that I needed, thinking, if I haven't got a job, I haven't got a house. I haven't got a house. I haven't got a roof above my head. I can't feed myself. I can't do anything. And I can't provide for my children. So that allowed me to give me a bit of focus. And through time, I opened up to my line manager, which wasn't easy, but he was probably the only one that I spoke to because I was embarrassed that I was being hit by a woman. I didn't like it, and I felt as though I couldn't talk to my friends or my family. And even though I have got a few really close mates, like we all have, it was just the sheer embarrassment of, I can't say this to anyone because, I'm going back 9, 10 years ago. It just wasn't it wasn't the done thing. So speaking to my boss, one, it allowed him to understand what I was going through, but two, he could also appreciate that why I was not performing as well as I could or should be in the workplace. Again, there was a couple of times where I'd be hit over the weekend, and I would, again, part of my job was to drive. I was a field manager, so I had to visit site to site. And there was this particular Monday that I remember really well. And once every month, I had to go to our head office to basically have a meeting with some senior stakeholders. And I was driving down the M6 at the time. It was a 4-hour drive, and crying 80% of the journey. I'm thinking, why am I driving here today with a black eye, a bruised cheekbone? Someone's going to ask me a question. Pull myself together. Again, on reflection, on hindsight, I should have just called in sick, but I didn't. I went to that meeting, and again, my senior manager pulled me aside saying, Craig, I'm here to help you, but you need to be honest with me. What's going on? And again, that's where the floodgates opened, and shared everything with him. And the support I got at that time from not only my line manager but my senior manager was unbelievable. Time off, there to speak to. They offered HR to be involved. Again, from a listening perspective, they took all pressure off me from a workload point of view as well, and they really allowed me to get my house in order, so to speak, in order to start performing at a higher level. Again, when I've been hit in the past, I actually went to the police one of the times when it was starting to become enough's enough. Went to the police to log a complaint. They were very, very sympathetic. They listened to everything I had to say. They took statements. I think they were more interested around what was she like as a mother. Because they wanted to understand if my son was in danger. And I was really honest, saying, look, he's not in danger, but right now I feel I'm in danger. And they followed through on the inquiries. They interviewed her, but it was literally my word against hers, and no charges were pressed against her, which was frustrating at the time. But it made me think about the point where going down the police route is not the answer every time this happens. I need to think seriously about my life from now. So I guess at that point, this is probably about 6 weeks out from leaving, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, I started to plan strategically, and I'll explain why in a minute, my exit from the home, and thinking about where I was going to go, what I was going to take, and what I was going to say. When I say strategically, I didn't have a house key. She used to make me knock at the front door because she didn't trust me with a house key to our house, which was absolutely nuts, again, when I think back on it. So you used to have to knock at the door, and she used to have a little pot of spare keys for the back door, which I took one and hid it underneath the carpet in my car. Again, just talking about this out loud, it sounds absolutely mental, but that's reality. That's what happened. And I decided that when the time was right, I thought, I'm going to leave, but I had to ensure that I had as many of my personal belongings as possible together in one space. So what I decided to do was, a lot of my stuff was together in one small cupboard. So, and a lot of her stuff was on top of that. It was an absolute riot, this cupboard. So I decided to put all my stuff in order, hoping she wouldn't see it, and then layer her stuff on top. So if she did open that cupboard thinking, oh, it's a riot, close it for another day. So I used to, tap away at that space and that stuff now and again. And I was was preparing myself for leaving the house. And then through time, she always had this routine where every Monday afternoon she was out. It was the only time I could guarantee that she was out the house. So that's when I planned it. So as it happened on the 7th of October 2013, and I'll never forget it. We were in the town that we lived in, and again, as harsh as it sounds, it's brutal when I say it, and I hate saying it, but my little boy was at the health visitor that day, and she asked me to leave work, which I did. Went to the health visitor to accompany to the visit, came back out, and at that point I knew that was it, because I knew she was going early afternoon off to where she went to on a Monday. And at that point I had the spare key in my car, and I had a sort of 90-minute 2-hour window to get what I wanted and get out. But as I look through the car that was parked in that car park that day, that's the last time I've seen my son. And that's the killer blow. And that's ultimately the price I've paid for the shit that I went through. But at the same time, if I didn't leave at that point, if I'm brutally honest with you, I would have lost my job, I would have lost my family, I would have lost my daughter. I might not even be here today. And that's just the harsh reality situation. And when I think about people say to me, like the people closest to me, how can you not see your son after that time? I've made peace with it. I've genuinely made peace with it, and it kills me every day. But again, the reality is, I couldn't be in his life while she's around, and I hope that later on in life he'll understand. And if that takes him till he's 30 years old, then so be it. But I had to get out for my own well-being, my own mental health, and my own sanity more than anything. Because, like I said, at certain points through that whole journey, I questioned myself around, what's the point? Who's going to care if I'm not here? My confidence was shot to pieces. I was lonely. I was scared. And that's what she wanted. She wanted that. But the one thing was my daughter. She was my shining light, no question. But the reason why I wanted to share the story was that I didn't seek help, really, and anyone that's in this position should seek help, and that is just speaking to a family friend, a stranger, someone on the end of a phone. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter, then reach out to me on Twitter. My name's Tonto Hibs. Send me a message, and I will absolutely be delighted to speak to anyone that's been in my position, to share my experience and what I've been through, and hopefully help you, because I'm a firm believer this is more common than people think and say it is. And the harsh reality is that people will end up getting in really dark places if they do not face into this. And there is life after these toxic, terrible, brutal relationships. I'm in one just now where life is awesome, and the only thing that's missing is really my son. But at the same time, I know that I can put my head on my pillow at night. I pay for him every month. I think about him every other day. And I know that one day I can sit down with him, look him in the eye and say, this is the reason why. And for me, I make peace with that. People listening to this might not, but you know what? That's my own personal decision. And for me, that's how I make peace with myself. So, like I said at the top of the call, just want to come on, share a little bit about my story. Hopefully, it raises a little bit of awareness around, males and females. Not saying it doesn't, affect females as well, but if not, affects females more. But typically, there's a lot more help and support out there for females than there is males. So, just wanted to share a little bit about my story, Matty.
Wow, that was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was. I'm going to jump in, and I didn't go to be rude or anything like that, but I think listening to that was so because myself have been a child in that situation. I'm not going to go too much into it, but my mum and my dad had a lot of problems when I was younger, and my mum especially. And yeah, to be the child in that situation wasn't great. And I know the feeling of like helplessness and not feeling loved and everything like that. And eventually it took my dad going to the doctor. And my dad was in a similar situation you where because he was being abused by a woman, he didn't feel, and he spoke to his sister Amanda, and she was like, "You've just got to go to the doctor." And the doctor was like, at that point, "I have a duty of care here, and I've got to get the police involved." And I think if my dad hadn't been to the doctor, God knows what would have happened to me and my dad. So I think it's so heartening to hear that story because I've been in that position, and I sort of understand. If that had been mad, obviously I ended up staying with my dad because of the way it all worked out. But if my dad had done it, I know that I would have understood why he'd done it. So I'm really hoping that like your son does, and I think he will because that's it. No matter what, kids know what their parents that they do the best for them. So I think it's really heartening to hear that. And like I said, I've been there. I don't talk about it much because I don't let it define me. I was 7, 8 at the time. I don't let it sort of define my past. But a lot of people say it. Like a lot of people say to me, like, Jack, you can't tell that like you're somebody that has been abused when you're younger. And I was like, because I don't let it, I don't let it get. I mean, I don't use it as an excuse or anything like that. If I've got a bad day, I don't go, "Oh, I was abused as a kid." And I think that's it. But I remember those. I mean, those were dark times for our family. And the whole point is like you're too scared to do anything about it. My dad was too scared to do it, but I was too scared because I was a kid. I thought nobody's going to believe me. Nobody's going to believe me if I say what's going on. So yeah, and I think in the end, everybody all being apart's better. Unfortunately, I don't have a great relationship with my mum at times. She still a lot of the issues that it wasn't physical as much with my mum. It was more for me. She did lash out occasionally at my dad, but for me it was psychological. It was all you're never going to amount to anything. You're a failure, everything like that. And I think it contributes to a lot to the reason that some of the stuff that I've had wrong with me mentally. Obviously, I've come on and talked about it on here before. How I do have issues with self-esteem. I do have issues with like doubting myself. And that all goes back to as a 7, 8-year-old kid, your mum's meant to say, "Oh, well done, son," or you're not meant to hear, "Oh, I wish I never had you," or you're a failure or whatever that for your mum when you're that age. You know what I mean? And I don't hold it against her. I understand my mum's, unfortunately, she behaved the way she did because she had really bad mental health issues herself. And of course, she came from a generation where you didn't talk about that sort of thing. You didn't get help, and unfortunately, it all got too much for her. So, and that in a way, and I've forgiven her. I've said, you did that stuff back then. It was bad, but I've forgiven you, mum. Because she's my mum. At the end of the day, I want to have a relationship with her. That's the point, and that's been my whole thing because I've seen families where folk don't have great relationship with their mothers, boys or girls. They don't have a great relationship with their mums. And it's horrible to see that because your mums gave birth to you and everything like that. And I think that's the thing is no matter how much I look back on that and go, that was a really bad time. And no matter how much I still have these fallings out, no matter how much my mum still says stuff to me, I still want to have that relationship with my mum. But like I said, there's somebody who's been through that sort of stuff. To hear a story like that's really heartening because I can draw a lot of similarities of being too scared to speak out. And again, my dad, because he was embarrassed that it was because my mum looking at her, she's tiny, she's quite short, and compared to my dad's big 6'2", and nobody would have believed that like my mum was lashing out at him and everything like that. She was a wee well-mannered woman. She was a wee well-mannered woman in public, and that's the thing is with people, and I always talk about this with abuse, is there's a mask when they're out in public. It's like they're living another life. My mum, when you were out with her, you wouldn't be able to tell. It was like a picture of happy families, nothing's going on behind the scenes. It was the picture, and that's what it wasn't just to strangers. That's what my grandparents were being led to believe. That's what teachers were being made to believe, and that's how nobody knew. And honestly, like when it all got reported and it all came out, and the police came to the house to speak to us. Again, that was really scary for me as a 7, 8-year-old young lad that have 2 police officers sitting in the house, and a social worker. And I didn't know who these people were, and they've come into my space. I'm a wee kid, they've come into my space. What's going on here? But I remember, when the social worker sort of explained why they were here, I just opened up. And again, as a kid, that's a really difficult thing to do when you don't understand what's going on. And I look back at it and go, I'm glad I did though. Because if I'd sort of like been like, "Oh, this didn't happen, that didn't happen," God knows what situation I would have been in. Because I genuinely, and I'm not sort of scared to say this, genuinely, one of us, if not all 3 of us, would have ended up dead. Unfortunately, that's the reality. That's unfortunately the reality. All of us would have ended up dead, or one of us would have ended up dead, because it was getting to that point. It was honestly getting to that point where my dad was at his breaking point. Now, my dad's not a violent guy at all. He's all salt of the earth, my dad. But he was getting to breaking point. My mum, because of how bad everything was for her, she'd been violent already. She was like, you don't know what she's going to do. And then there's me as a little kid that, you know, I'm a tiny wee boy. What's going to happen to me in that situation if there is a blow up sort of thing? But it all eventually worked out that my mum left, and, you know, my mum and dad are no longer together. And I think that's been for the best. That has been for the best. And it was all point of finding a way out. It was my mum that actually she was the one that chose the way out, which I think, looking back, it's another reason why I've chosen to forgive her, because she was the one that went, right, this obviously isn't working, and I've obviously got my issues, so I need to take a step back. And she just one night she packed her bags and left the house, and that was it. It was like, and she's now got her own place, and I think that's it. But unfortunately, what's wrong with my mum, and I'm not going to go into it on here because that's my mum's issues, and I think that she can talk about that in her own time. But what's wrong with mum, unfortunately, is not going to be fixed easily. You know, it's something that it's gone, and unfortunately that does lead to, and I still have fallings out with her. But the thing is, I like I said, I don't hold her responsible for any of it because of her issues and the fact that she has tried to make amends, even though we still have our fallings out, even though she still says some nasty things to me, and even though I still feel like you don't have that proper mother-son relationship there, I still feel that she's my mum, and that's it. So I just wanted to jump in with my sort of experiences there, and again, it's led to why I've had mental health issues. Again, a lot of my sort of worst ones, like the self-esteem and the not having trust with people at times, that has been as a result of that. But I think I've moved past that. One of the reasons I wanted to come on tonight was actually to discuss, and I'll give the other guys a chance to talk, but to discuss how I've actually improved recently, because I think the last time I came on here was when I was at one of my sort of lower points, but I've actually improved massively. So I can talk about that later. I'll sort of give the other guys a chance to speak, but I really, just after reading Craig's, I've got to say, Craig, massive well done to you for finding a way out, and because I think that's it. You know, you've got to find a way out eventually, no matter what. It's about putting yourself in a situation where you know you're safe, and I think that's it. And you've done an amazing job, and I think it's great to speak out, because, you know, I know from, like you're saying, somebody that's been through it myself, that it's difficult to talk about it. It's so difficult to talk about abuse, because it's not just the fact, like, it's obviously a horrible situation. It's also the fact that you don't want people to judge you. I think when you say I've been a victim of abuse, people say, oh, they either sort of pussyfoot around it, or they don't really understand. That's the big one for me. So I've got to say, fair play, Craig, honestly, and it was
I appreciate that, Jack.
Story, and thank you for speaking out.
No, I appreciate that. Just again, before the other guys come in, I just want to pick up on a couple of points here. First of all, it's interesting to hear from the child's perspective in that situation. So thanks for sharing that as well, because, you know, again, it gives me a little bit of confidence that, you know, I know I made the right decision, but if I hadn't, then my son would have seen what would have happened in terms of me, you know, likely being hit every other day, every other week, every other month, whatever it would be, and it might have got worse. You just never know. You know, what I would say is that, you know, on occasion, my daughter did see some of that. She's seen it probably in a playful but not so playful way, and, you know, again, that's something that, you know, I don't want to scar her life with. Hence why, you know, when it got to that point, and, you know, I use this phrase in my work a lot. You know, you take it to the edge. You know, at what point do you think you need to make a decision here? And it was that point where I'm thinking, you know, I'm wearing the same clothes for the last 3 days because I can't wash my clothes. Things like that. I've got less than £10 to my name, you know, a week before payday. What the hell am I doing? You know, and then my dad's saying to me, Craig, get a grip of your life. You know, I'll help you as much as I can, but you need to make the first step. And at that point you think, right, bloody hell, you know, there's a full beam in my eyes thinking, wake up. And that was at the point where I'm thinking, this is the first day of the rest of my life. So it's interesting hearing your view as a child in a horrendous situation. But it's interesting now that your mum, you know, is separated from your dad, which sounds like that's the best thing for all parties. Yeah, but what gives me a little bit of reassurance as well is that while you might not be too close to your mum, you've still got some kind of relationship with your mum as well. So that gives me, you know, a bit of confidence. And like I say, I'm delighted for you as well. being in that situation.
Absolutely. You know, I still go every weekend to see my mum. That was a sort of arrangement we came to, that I go and see every weekend, and I still go as much as I can, because it's about, I think, about rebuilding that relationship. Is, you know, and I've said it numerous times on here already, but because of her mental health, and because I've had bad mental health issues, it's turned me into somebody I don't like as well. See, when I'm at my worst, when I was at my worst, I was a monster. And I've spoke about it on here before. I was hanging about with the wrong crowd. I was getting myself into bad situations. I was bunking off school, not bunking off school as in not going to school, but not putting an effort in school. So I know that when you're really bad with your mental health, it can turn you into a person you don't like. And I think that happened. My mum has PTSD and other issues alongside that, that haven't been diagnosed as of yet, but is suspected she has by a mental health nurse. And that's why I go, you know, when you're in that sort of, you don't know what you're doing. And I always say, anytime my mum has issues like, or she has quite a high stress job as well. She's a university lecturer, and she sort of splits herself over 2 universities. So obviously that's quite a lot of work. If she's stressed and she gets a bit, I say that's not my mum, because my mum is a caring person. She can be. She's amazing. I say that's not my mum. That's the side. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. That's the side of my mum that I don't. And I say I've separated it. I don't even have a name for it. But I say that's not my mum. That's that woman, and she's not my mum. My mum, I know my mum can come out. I know my mum can come back out. But when she's not my mum, it's a hard to deal with. And I've said that with myself. You know, I sort of separated out and said that guy's like Mr. Jekyll. That's the bad Jack. He's like Mr. Jekyll. He's the guy that's bad. He does. And when I want to bring Jack back, so, and that's why I started really sort of working on my mental health. Because I thought, I don't want the bad side. I didn't want Mr. Jekyll coming out anymore. I want Jack to stay, and that's it. I don't want the bad guy out anymore, and that's it. Because I'm not afraid to admit I was a bad guy because of my mental health. And like I said, it wasn't just the not putting in the effort at school, and it wasn't just the hanging about with the wrong crowd. It was pushing family away as well, or trying to cover it up. You know, I thought I needed to be strong, but because obviously a lot of my mental health issues came about because my granddad passed away back in 2019. He had pancreatic cancer, and it was obviously quite horrific to see how he deteriorated. You know, it wasn't a fast process. It was over 8 months from diagnosis until he died. And seeing that, my granddad, who was a man that had done everything for me, he was like a second dad, my granddad, and he was the one that got me into supporting Hibs, and I did everything with my granddad. I was like my granddad's wee shadow when I was a wee boy, and seeing that was what really set me off, and that set me down a dark path. And then COVID made things even worse. But then after, when we were sort of coming out from the first lockdown, I went, you know what, it's time I make positive decisions in my life. So I got rid of the bad crowd. I got myself away, because I was doing stupid things, and it wasn't just I was being the victim of stupid things. Well, so I thought these folk were my mates. They weren't. They were just taking a line of me. You know, I was getting videos taken of me and put on Snapchat and everything like that. And I wasn't looking after myself. I let my personal hygiene deteriorate as well. At a really bad point. Again, I'm not afraid to admit any of this. I wasn't taking showers or baths. I wasn't cutting my fingernails, anything like that. I was just letting myself go, because I thought, well, you know what? Why should I care about what I look like or anything like that when I quite frankly hate myself? You know what I mean? So I think, yeah, mental health can turn you into somebody you really don't like, but it's about getting to the point where you can go, I can overtake that, and that's what I've done. And you know, I look at myself for when I'm 19. I just turned 19 the other week there. I look at myself for when I was 17, 16 to now. And I'm a completely different person. And I'm so proud of myself for making that journey, because the journey has been horrible, it's been difficult, but I'm glad I made it, because I've come out the end of it as a better person. I've come out as someone that's not afraid of their mental health. Because I used to think, because obviously when you're a kid at school, you go, you know, I'm afraid what other laddies will say. Oh, you're one of the lads, you don't want to talk out because unfortunately that's the sort of culture when you're a young lad. I'm sure you guys will know as well that when you're at school, it's oh look at me, I'm doing this, I'm one of the lads, I'm too cool for school, everything like that. I think you know, it's an unfortunate reality that, especially in Scotland, I have to say, that there's all about having to be a wee arsehole, for better want of a word, at school. And that's what I was. Towards latterly, I was an arsehole. I used to, and I'm not proud of this, but I used to deliberately do stupid things so I could get in with the in crowd. You know what I mean? And I look back and I say, why do I, and I'm so grateful for the friends I have and people I have around me now. You know, I'm on the Strong Opinion podcast with Charlie and Calvin, those guys have been amazing, like honestly. And I've met Matty, Alec, all them through Twitter. They've been amazing. The changing room with Hibs, I think I was really lucky to take part in that course because obviously it's not targeted at my age group. It's sort of targeted towards guys, middle-aged sort of guys, older guys. It wasn't targeted towards younger men sort of thing because they wanted to sort of, and I got in contact with Kieran Power, the fan rep, and said, look, I'm really struggling, Kieran. Is there anything the club can do to help? And he spoke to the guys that run the changing room fair, and the fair said, right, well, we'll get Jack on. And yeah, I think I came out of that so much better because it was listening to the other guys as well and maybe having that sort of wisdom for some of the older guys, especially like guys like Ringo. Ringo was great on the changing room. And same with there's another Craig that went to the changing room. Craig, he had went through some stuff as well, and just listening to their experiences and realizing that this happens to guys because my sort of dad's age, that helped me as well because I thought being a young guy that it was like something that this lasts forever, and realizing when it doesn't last forever, and the dark times don't last forever, and that's why it's important to talk. And again, I've just got to reiterate what Craig said earlier on, that anybody that wants to get in contact with me with Twitter, I'll drop what I'm doing and I'll speak to you because I think it's so important to have those discussions. Obviously, I won't drop if I'm eating my tea. I'll only split on the plate.
We're not taking you literally. You're all right. You don't need to qualify it, mate. You're okay.
So yeah, that's what I've got to say is I've turned a massive corner and I'm so proud of myself and I'm not going back either. And I know I'm not going back, but I've got so many, and not just that, but working with Edinburgh City women as well. I'm sure a lot of people will see that. I work with Edinburgh City women. Anybody that follows me on Twitter, I work as a volunteer media at Edinburgh City's women's team, and they've been amazing as well. All the players are absolutely fantastic, and Willie and Kenny, the coaches as well. They've been great with me because for the very start I made it clear that I do struggle sometimes, and the girls have all been fantastic. I'll say it's like having 21 big sisters instead of working with a squad of players. Honestly, that's what it's like. They're amazing. They all look after me, and I appreciate that. And folk at Hibs as well. Kieran Power, the fan rep, a lot of the women's team players at Hibs and everything like that, they're all looking out for me as well. And I'm so lucky to have that. And I think football's been a massive part of that for me. I've said that before on here, but football's just been so helpful for me. And the German football community as well. Obviously, I'm a big German football fan. All the folk I've met through that have been amazing as well. I'm sure people might have seen it on Twitter that the guys that have come up from England to come to the Hibs game to take advantage of football for a fiver. I knew them through Twitter because of German football, and they come up and I had an amazing laugh with them before the game, and we were at the Witherspoons at the Omni Centre, and we had an amazing laugh and amazing chat. And I think I've been so lucky with that, and I'm so proud of my journey because I'm now working towards my goals, my dreams to work in football media, and I'm really working towards that. So I've been so lucky.
Good for you,
to have
Jack.
So that's it. I'll let somebody else have a chat now. Somebody will be getting fed up of hearing my voice.
We're almost out of time. We said we're in for half an hour tonight, but we've gone on a bit longer than that. But that's absolutely fine. Craig, one of the things I wanted to ask is, how's life been for you since you made that move? After you took
it's been a journey, Matty. It's not get away from it. I think the first few years after leaving, one, you get your life back in terms of your career. You start performing at a good level in the workplace again. You start getting your finances back in order. You start, righting a lot of wrongs that have been, mistakes that have been made through the last few years. And then since then, it has been really good. Things have got better and better. Met amazing women. In the last, we've been together now for about, she's going to kill me if I get this wrong, but about 7.5, 8 years. So we're in a really, really good place, and we've since had a little boy now who's 3.5, and that's great. So that's amazing. I do live through the west now. You probably hear a slight twang to my accent. Hence why I don't get to as many games at Easter Road as I once did, but still try and make the time. But yeah, life is so much better. I can truly appreciate happiness again, rather than thinking I'm living from day to day. I'm living, I'm fearing driving home. I want to be at work as long as I possibly can be, purely because I don't want to drive home and face what I'm going to face. So yeah, that nightmare chapter in my life is long gone. But like I said to you during what I was talking about, the one thing that pulls me back to it is my son. And like I said, he'll never be far from my thoughts. What I do, and again, this works for me, it might not work for everyone, is I set up an email address that's just a generic email, and I send emails to it from my own personal email address on how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking about, and it's obviously about my son. And one day, I will give him the email address and password to log into that account, and he can read and see at certain points, whether it's in 2015 or 2025, he will know that I've been thinking about him, rather than me just maybe meeting him when he's 25, 30, 35 years old, thinking, I don't really know you. You could just be telling me a load of bullshit. But, hopefully with doing things, little things, and it's a tiny thing, but doing a little thing like that might just help my future relationship with my son, whenever that might be.
Amazing thing to do. Just for the last few minutes, Scott and Alex, we've not really kind of heard too much from you. Alex, I'll come to you first. What are your thoughts on the discussion tonight?
It's pretty unbelievable. I don't know what to say, but very well done to both of you for talking about your experiences. It takes big balls to do that, so very well done. I don't know, I've never went through anything like that experience-wise, but I can relate to what Craig said on a previous partner I had. She didn't trust me. That was it. She was a bit older, like not very much, like 5 or 6 years older than me. I was to use Jack words, I was being a wee arsehole with my mates, and that wasn't really. I was just going to the pub and like not doing anything wrong, coming back, and she just didn't trust me at all. She must have thinking I was up to no good, and I just wasn't. It kept going on and on. She wanted to see all my phone messages and stuff, and I just thought, what the fuck? Why would you ask anybody to see phone messages? But I hadn't been through that kind of thing. I think she had been through a bad relationship before and thought I was the same guy as she was with before, but it just wasn't the case. I realised that I had to get out of that situation quite early on in the relationship, and kind of seen my opportunity and went for it, but I maybe went around it the wrong way. And she pulled a knife out on herself and threatened to. She was really drunk and she pulled this knife out. I thought, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what's going on? She's like, I'll do it. I'll hit my wrist with this knife. I'm like, why? I'm trying to, like, this isn't working. And she had 2 kids as well. I'm like, fuck it. I'm scared for them at the time. And they didn't care because they were sleeping. So I sort of calmed the situation down. And she went to sleep. And I phoned her mum and I explained, like, look, this is what's going on. You have to come and help. Or I says, I need to get out of the house, but I didn't want to leave her with the kids. And so her mum came round, and like the following day, I just sort of made sure she was all right and had to sort of go through it all again. But she sort of accepted that it was over, and so there wasn't any abuse as such. But I just realised that, like, somebody wanting to read your messages, something's not right there. Like, you can't. You have to have a back and forth with people to trust each other. And like I remember one of the nights thinking, oh, maybe I'll just leave my phone in her house and I'll go back at night. That just made it worse because she didn't know where I was. So it was. I'll no name her, but I know she's in a happy relationship now, and it's all good. Our kids are grown up and that, so both of us are better off. But that was just something that you said that just clicked in my head, that I thought, oh, maybe I could share that. It's not by any means what you have been through, but what you've said tonight, Craig, is somebody bound to be out there thinking that's what I'm going through. So so that's all I'll say on it.
And Scott, same question to you. How have you felt about the discussion tonight?
Keep it short, because I know you want to watch Peaky Blinders. First thing to that and Craig are really brave for sharing their story tonight, especially Craig. I'm like, wow, that's really powerful stuff to hear it from a man's point of view, because you rarely hear it from that point of view. I think, Jack, I wanted to say, I'm a little bit jealous that you're able to get yourself sorted in your early teen years. It took me to my mid-30s to sort my head out. So well done on you. You've got your whole future ahead of you. And it took me 20 odd years to sort myself out. Craig, I want you to know that my mother was a toxic parent, and there's light at the end of the tunnel for being a child of a toxic parent. You can see that they're a toxic parent when you grow up, and you will literally go, that's not right. So we're not stupid, the kids of toxic parents, as Jack pointed out. We do know, we're aware of what's going on. We're not stupid. We know the truth. We can see that person's not right sometimes. It's not themselves, as Jack was saying, it's a different person. So there is literally hope and light for in the future. That child will go, oh, no, don't want them anymore. And they will see that. So trust me, it will happen one day. It's all happened to all of us. The light just went, ooh, that's strange. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. I'm not going to make any jokes tonight about that, because it's been really super serious. So well done, guys.
Well done, everybody. And thank you so much for coming on, everybody. Thank you for listening. We will, I think, as normal, kind of put up a few tweets to share this. If it's something that's connected with you and you want to reach out, you can get us. Our DMs are open. We won't drop everything, literally, to get back to you, but we'll get back to you as quickly as we possibly can. So you can get us at Longbangers. You can email us at longbangers@gmail.com as well. In the meantime, thanks very much for listening, guys. Thanks once again for coming back on. Really, really loved listening to that episode tonight. And we'll see you next time.
County line, I pledged upon. Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't drink water, no.